If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey, Eleanor. How's it going today?
I'm feeling so good. That book we read about forest bathing?
Mm-hmm.
I did it yesterday.
Oh,
Went out for a really wonderful day in the woods with a good friend and was just in the woods and let it bathe me.
That's awesome.
So I'm feeling really good today.
I'm glad. Well, hey, I have a quick funny story. You know how they say the dog ate my homework?
Mm.
Well, I had to go to the library and tell them the dog ate my book.
Oh, no. Are you kidding?
Yes. No, I'm not kidding. So I borrowed Essentialism by McKeown.
Wait, who's your dog?
My dog, Macy. She...
what kind of dog is Macy?
She is a
Hungry dog.
She's a sheepadoodle. And I left my Essentialism library book in the living room with her one day, and I came back and she ate a big chunk out of it.
So she was hungry for information.
She was. So I had to purchase the book for myself and one for the library replacement.
Ooh.
So the dog ate my book.
Okay, Macy.
And I'm really glad, though, that she did, because now I have my own copy. And let me tell you, I have done a lot of highlighting in here.
Oh.
And I'm glad I get to keep this one.
Yes. So, highlighting. I use pencils. I use sticky notes. I do all sorts of fun things. Yeah. It's funny how we interact with printed material, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And some books you don't even want to touch. It's like, nah, I'll just flip the pages. This one we kind of wanted to think about, though, didn't we?
We did. It's a New York Times bestseller, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, and I'm excited to dig into it.
Yeah, we hear a lot about, simplify, and I think we've even talked about that in some of our other conversations, and some of the reading that we're doing seems to be reinforced here. But so let me tell you a little bit about McKeown. Is that, you think, how you say his name?
Oh, sure.
Or is it McKeown?
I don't know.
Well, he's British. And he's a 44-year-old, which puts him in a younger than me category, and has a pretty interesting journey to what has got him into this stuff. He published this book through Currency Trade, which is a British subdivision of Random House and Penguin. So, I always like these publishing houses, so that meets my little criteria. Mm-hmm. But he's promoted as a public speaker, a leadership and business strategist. Can you imagine a job like that? I mean, I'm just sitting there, what does he really do? You're a leadership and business strategist. So do you go into businesses and help them strategize how to maximize their profits, or?
Yeah, I think it's a fancy word for a business coach,
Oh, okay. All right. Well, he got there with a BA degree in communication and journalism from Brigham Young University, even though he's Brit. He came to the States to study. And then in 2008, he got an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business, which is pretty impressive. And I would categorize him as an entrepreneur, because here's a young kid, with this kind of interesting degree. Like, what do you do with that? Communications, journalism. That's a tough market to get into.
And it is pronounced McKeown.
McKeown?
McKeown.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, graduates in 2008, and then 4 years later, 2012, he's being recognized by the World Economic Forum, and he's being inducted into the Forum of Young Global Leaders. So somehow this guy impressed some people or got somewhere. And I did see that he did an interview with Al Gore once. And so I'm wondering if he made some connections in that first couple of years out of college or out of his MBA. But anyway, he's written a couple other books, and I might read the next one because it's called Effortless. And I will talk about that maybe as we get into the book. And he's written with other people. He's married. He has 4 kids. But he's a bishop in the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And he wrote an article on essentialism from a gospel perspective.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, so I think this guy brings to the table a very different background, and he's got some pretty distilled down to the essential comments. So that's what I would say about our author, and I think he's, I wanted to read him. I wanted to see what he had to say.
Yeah. And he primarily speaks to, it seems like, business executives in the way that The Lazy Genius, back a couple episodes, was primarily speaking to moms. Mm-hmm. But I was definitely able to make some connections between, just daily life and even health and wellness.
Oh, absolutely.
Beyond the business part of it.
Yeah, well, there's the book is visually interesting because he has some charts, and he is always comparing the non-essentialist to the essentialist, and he has really key points he wants to drive home. So those charts are really nice in here. And then there'll be like half or a third of a page to some explosive print. And so you stop and go, what's that say? It's like you can't miss that one. And one of the first ones he says, and I'm sure many of us have heard this before, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. Mm-hmm. And we always say if you don't work for yourself, you're going to work for somebody else for make their dreams come true instead of your dreams come true. So, yeah, that's a truism, I think.
I agree. And I think we don't realize that we're quote unquote non-essentialists, right? But he describes what that is and what the essence of an essentialism is, what essentialism is. And I think maybe that's a good place to start as we talk about this. Mm-hmm. Part 1 talks about the essence where, we do have the power of choice, the power to choose how we spend our time, what we value. And sometimes we get caught up in thinking that we don't. And then we also have to realize that you can't have it all. And most of the things that we make out to be important are really not. And that's a hard thing to realize, but I think a great point to make. And then lastly, once you realize not everything is important, you have to get comfortable with trade-offs. Say no to one thing in order to say yes to something more meaningful to you.
Kind of an adult idea, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're growing up, you're being told what to do mostly. You're being counseled. You're being guided. You're being, you're deferring to a higher wisdom, your parents or your school or authorities, whatever. And in this instance, as you become an adult, it is up to you. I mean, and a lot of people don't understand, the rules have changed. Those folks are not telling me what to do anymore. But you drag that with you. Oh, my mom would tell me to do this, or my dad would expect me to do this.
Mm. Yeah, I found myself asking why and how do we end up non-essentialists? Mm-hmm. And I think it's like the pressures of our past, mm-hmm. but also current social pressures from work or just, like the idea of supermom. Mm-hmm. It's good to be a supermom and be able to do it all.
Oh yeah, I mean it looks great. I want that life.
Right. And what do we say about the healthcare workers right now? Oh, they're
burned out.
They're burned out, but we're like, oh, you're such a superhuman. Mm-hmm. And I saw somewhere that a nurse was like, stop calling us superhuman because we're just human. And we don't have magical powers and we're getting burnt out just because we're showing up. So, yeah, I think it's social pressures. It's also people pleasing and wanting to kind of rise up in the ranks. We think we've got to do it all. Mm-hmm. And Greg kind of shows us that actually it's the opposite. To be successful, we have to edit and cut out a lot of things.
At least that would be his advice.
That would be his advice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, can I share a quote out of here?
Absolutely.
He was saying that he's trying to understand why otherwise intelligent people make the choices they make in their personal and professional lives. And that tends to be his study area. I mean, he's probably interviewed lots of people and worked with different teams of people. He said, why is it, I wonder, that we have so much more ability inside of us than we often choose to utilize? And I think that might come from his spiritual background too, that idea that we have gifts, but we're not using them. And he says, and how can we make the choices that allow us to tap into more of those potential inside ourselves and the people around us? My mission is to shed light on these questions And it caused him to change tracks. He quit law school and went on a tour of England and other places, and then ended up in California to do his graduate work. But he got a question presented itself in front of me. So why are they making these choices? And it changed his life because that's what he decided he wanted to pursue.
It reminds me of Think Like a Monk.
Oh, mm-hmm.
How
Yes.
his life changed as well, and then went into monastery. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he has a model that he puts forward at the beginning of the book that he develops, and he likes to draw these little sketches. So he draws a little knot of yarn or just a tangle of lines, and then he has an arrow pointing to like a circular drawing. So he's saying the non-essentialist is a tangled, messed up, nonsensical thing, and the essentialist has some sort of organization. And then he talks about non-essentialists, how they think, what they do, and what they get. And so he says that non-essentialist thinks all people are all things to all people. And I know that there have been a lot of us that have determined, I think that might be what I've been trying to do. Instead of taking care of myself, I'm trying to be the good wife, the good employee, the good mother, and, just everything to everybody else but ourselves. So we would say things like, I have to, or it's all important. I can't eliminate anything because it all has to get done. The groceries have to be put away. The kids have to be put to bed. They have to have bed. It has to happen. Mm-hmm. And how can I fit it all in? Because we only have so many hours each day. The non-essentialist is more reactive to what's pressing them. They say yes to people without really thinking, and they try to force execution at the last moment. So they'll get down to the squeeze play and then try to do it anyway, instead of saying maybe this doesn't have to happen.
Guilty.
Yep. And then what do they get? Lives. They live a life that does not satisfy them. They take on too much and work suffers. They feel out of control, is unsure of whether the right things got done, and feels overwhelmed and exhausted. That's your non-essentialist. Anybody out there living that life?
Feeling a little burnout, exhausted, overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. So then he says what essentialists have learned to do is less is better. When we're thinking, we say things like, I choose to. I'm choosing to do this. Only a few things really matter. And what are the trade-offs?
Mm-hmm.
I've found myself in that only a few things really matter. I'm not so good at the choose to yet, but I'm working on that one. Like I'm not going to choose to be in that conversation. I'm going to choose to avoid it. What do they essentialists do is they pause to discern what really matters. That pause, take that breath and just assess what's going on, and then say no to everything except the essential, and remove obstacles to make the execution of that easy. And what do they end up getting? They get lives that really matter. They're choosing carefully in order to do great work. They're feeling in control. They're getting the right things done, and they're experiencing joy on the journey. Mm. So that's his model, and he compares the non-essentialists to the essentialists and gives us lots of good examples in this book.
One big takeaway from me in the beginning was this quote, "The ability to choose cannot be taken away. It can only be forgotten." And he talks about the experiment on these poor dogs who were shocked. And there is some dogs who could stop the shock and another group of dogs who were powerless to stop it. And then later on in the experiment, in a different environment, the dogs who weren't able to stop the shock then assumed that they were always going to be powerless. And even though they had the option to move to the other side of the room where they would avoid shock, they chose to just stay there. So, it's learned helplessness. And if we feel like we don't have the choice in one situation, it can easily make us feel like we never have the choice again. And we get stuck in that, well, I have to, or people are expecting me to, so I'm just going to do it.
Right. Maybe that's when you need a business strategist.
Or a life strategist.
Yeah, something like that.
So that was a big takeaway for me, that we kind of have to wake ourselves up out of that learned helplessness sometimes and not forget that we do have the choice.
Well, he has a chapter on dare, and that's the power of a graceful no. So I think when you
That was big too.
when you have a choice, that means you can choose yes or you can choose no, right?
And I think that's so hard for a lot of people. And he did talk about how he wasn't setting out to write a chapter on courage, but really it could be saying no is very courageous.
Absolutely, yeah. He talks about essentially awkward, which I think a lot of us, say yes sometimes because it's awkward. And he talks about there's a second reason why it's hard to choose what is essential in the moment is as simple as an innate fear of social awkwardness. The fact is, we as humans are wired to want to get along with others. Mm-hmm. After all, thousands of years ago, we all lived in tribes, hunter-gatherers, our survival depended on it. And while conforming to what people in a group expect of us, what psychologists call normative conformity, isn't really no longer a matter of life and death. The desire is still deeply ingrained in us, just like those dogs. You were talking about, once it gets ingrained, you don't stop and say, do I need to behave this way anymore? I mean,
right.
I'm not going to die if I say no.
Right. Oh, there's a good story in that chapter about saying no. Mm-hmm. A little girl, Cynthia, well, she was no longer a little girl, but she was telling the story about when she was a little girl and her dad was going to take her on this big date. They were going to go to, I think, San Francisco for a conference. And they had planned out to a T this time that they were going to spend together after her dad spoke at a conference. And the anticipation of it was the big fun of it. And it came down to that day. They had it, she was going to be in the back of the presentation hall and he was going to leave. And then they were going to zoom off to the fish market. And
she was so excited, wasn't she?
She was so excited. And as they were getting ready to leave, he got stopped by someone he hadn't seen in a really long time. And as I was reading this, my heart just fell to the ground. I'm like, please tell me he doesn't ditch the date. But he was offered to go out to dinner with this old friend, and he said, no, but I'd love to later or maybe another time. And because he had awareness of what that trade-off was, he was able to easily say no and honor that time with his daughter. And then later we learned that the dad is the author Stephen R. Covey. Is that how you say it? Covey? Mm-hmm. Of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But that was really powerful, knowing your trade-off, because it's easier to say no, even if it's socially awkward, when you know the meaningful things you get to say yes to because of that no.
Yeah, and that's just, I think, coming from the essentialist heart.
Yeah.
That fella knew that the time with his daughter was more important. It mattered. And, a lot of times, I'm ashamed to say this, I have neglected my kids in favor of other things because I think, my understanding of the priority was not right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I could relate too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of parents can do that. We get, work assignments that take huge amounts of time, and we feel like, well, they're paying me to do this, so I need to do it, rather than being brave and saying, you asked me, this is not what I signed up for. So if you want me to do this, we're going to have to talk. Like he did with his friend, Stephen Covey said, yes, I do want to meet with you. This is just not the right time. Can we schedule, gave an option for both to occur because he felt that was probably important too, but the priority was his daughter.
Yeah, I really appreciated the very specific examples of how to say no in a polite manner.
So I have one. Can I read one?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought this was like really good. This, the master of the graceful no, and I cannot say his name, so Timothy, you're going to have to look this one up because CSIKSZENTMIHALY. You got that?
CSI.
KSZEN.
TMIHALY.
Yeah, that's it.
AALY.
Yeah, so Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the Hungarian professor. How do you say it?
Okay, hold on.
It's a big word.
It is. Those Hungarians, man.
Yeah, and what he's most well known for, his work on flow. Because these people that study actions and work things. So this guy has a reputation in that, and I can't say his name.
Chick sent me Haley.
There you go. Okay, so
Chick sent me Haley.
All right. He reached out to interview a series of creative individuals for a book he was writing on creativity. And Peter Drucker, do you remember Peter Drucker?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, Peter Drucker, let's see, what can I tell you about him? Father of modern management thinking.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
that guy.
Yeah. So Peter
He would have
Drucker.
been my 8th guess.
All right. Okay. So here are these two very prominent people, right? Okay. Drucker's response was, interestingly enough, to Mahaley, that he quoted it verbatim. Quote, "I am greatly honored and flattered by your kind letter of February 14th, for I have admired you and your work for many years." See that? Butter the guy up, right?
Mm-hmm.
"And I have learned much from it. But my dear professor, I am afraid I have to disappoint you. I cannot possibly answer your questions. I'm told I'm creative. I don't know what that means. I'm just keep on plodding. I hope you will not think me presumptuous or rude if I say that one of the secrets of productivity, in which I believe, whereas I do not believe in creativity," he believes in productivity, but not creativity, "is to have a very big waste paper basket to take care of all invitations such as yours. Productivity, in my experience, consists of not doing anything that helps the work of other people, but to spend all one's time on the work the good Lord has fitted one to do and to do it well. So the true essentialist, Peter Drucker, believes that people are effective because they say no." And I thought, wow, you're going to say this thing about productivity consists of not doing anything that helps the work of other people. And, I come from a tradition of helping.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be radical for me to step into that. I think I see the wisdom in it. I just don't know how you get that strength to say, clearly, your work is not important to me.
Right, and I don't know.
But
if
he
all
said-
did that, then would we get anything accomplished?
I don't know, but he flattered the guy and he told him all this stuff. And he said, "I know you might think I'm rude, but I'm just gonna say no."
Yeah. Here's one I liked. I would want to do a great job, but given my current commitments, I wouldn't be able to do the job that I was proud of if I took this project on.
Yeah,
especially good for like work.
I think that's great for work. And I've encouraged people to say that to their supervisors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think men in my experience, men have been more comfortable with that than women, because of that pleasing thing that so many women it may not be true anymore. Because I think this generation of women that are coming through are pretty strong, centered people. So we might not see as much of that gender differentiation. But anyway, to say to a boss, no, you asked me to do this project, and now you keep telling me to do these other projects, so you need to make the priority on which one of these you want me to spend my time on, putting it back in their court.
Right.
Because I can't do them all, like you just said, and do them well. So do you want me to not do them well? I mean, that's a brave statement to someone who has power over you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could make that person step back and be like, oh.
That's what you'd hope they would do.
You would hope, yes.
Yeah, rather than use a little upstart and you to do it all, or I get somebody else in here to do it.
Another way he put that is, sure, I'll do that. What should I deprioritize?
Yes, I like that. Yeah.
So, yeah, just kind of reminding people what's already on your plate, and if you want me to do this well, you're going to need to give me some.
Yeah, and do it respectfully. I mean, and you offer that insight that they, a lot of times people say, gee, thanks, now I'm too thin. Because he says there's a paradox of success, that it has 4 phases. He says, we need to define the clarity of our purpose. And once you have that and you start doing it, you gain a reputation. And then you're the good old person, we need to get her involved in this because she's so good. So let's
that's
get her.
the worst in nonprofit land, because if you're good at something, then everything falls on your plate.
Exactly. And then what happens after you've got this reputation, your efforts are diffused and you start spreading yourself thinner and thinner.
Right.
And then when you get thinner and thinner, you get distracted.
Yeah.
And so that clarity of purpose is lost, that very first initial step of that. So what he's saying is the pursuit of success can be a catalyst for failure. And I think that's true. It could be, unless you've got someone that can do these other skills of saying, I'm not going to get distracted. I'm not going to say yes to everything that I'm asked to do. I'd like to, but there's just one of me.
I think, like with social obligations or asks, like I think this is categorizing or stereotyping, but I think women have a hard time saying no to, like, will you join the PTA? Will you help the church with this? Will you bring this meal to this family?
And some men have the problem with that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Men.
Will you host the golf tournament? Will you DJ the thing?
Right.
No.
No? Okay.
No, see, I figured that out. I got it.
I have the equipment, and no, I'm not doing that.
But for me, it helps to remember, and he talks about this in the book, that clear is kind. So being vague, which is kind of my default if I'm feeling nervous or awkward or not wanting to say no, being vague is not the same as being graceful, and delaying the eventual no will only make it that much harder for you and the person you're saying no to.
You said this was a business book initially, and I'll give you a personal example of that one.
Okay.
I had a what would you call it? A romantic involvement with someone, and they decided they didn't want to continue it. You know how that happens, and I still admire this person so much because he had the fortitude to say, it's over, we're done, and I know I'm probably making a big mistake because you're so wonderful. He buttered me up that way. But it was like I had a clear understanding of this is not going anywhere, so I can move on to something else. I don't have to waste my time trying to figure it out or make it better or, twerp myself around. And that is kind.
Absolutely.
It is very
great
kind.
Example.
Yeah.
And he didn't drag it out or
no,
lead you on.
Avoid saying, I really don't like you because I don't want to hurt your feelings. But, no, he didn't want a future with me. So he was just clear. I don't want a future with you. But he did it in a very wonderful way. And as much as it hurt, I thought, God, that was really grown up.
It's not you. It's me.
It's just you. No, it was me. No, it was us. I mean, it was an us thing, Us's don't always work. I mean, the two people can be great, but the us's may not be such a good fit. So even though this, you had the perception it was more a business, I kind of took it more as a personal thing as well.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think the more we can say no, we can make peace with the trade-off of we might not be as popular to everybody, but we will earn their respect.
Yeah, and then what is that? What's the hesitation there that we can't be everything to everybody and we can't be loved by everybody and that somebody's not going to like me?
Yeah. We're like,
you got to accept that, don't you?
Yeah. But it's a good reminder that we can't be everybody's favorite.
Yeah. Your peeps are not my peeps or whatever. Yeah. Well, we probably need to wrap this up a little bit. There's at the end of this book is a 21-day essentialism challenge. These are very popular things in some of the books that we're reading. Take a 30-day challenge or a 10-day challenge or do this for a week. So here's his 21-day challenge, and he lays it all out here, what we're going to do. And he gives you a website that you can go to, and you can use a code to access some videos. So I actually did that. Did you do it?
I did not.
Well, it didn't work for me. So I thought I might have done something wrong. Yeah.
So I did it, and it didn't work.
Yeah, so when I hit that the website is very clear. It said, the free, or do you want to pay $79 for this? And, I didn't want to pay $79 yet. I'm not saying I wouldn't. But this, what he wrote in a book didn't tell me that would be my choice and which lever to pull. Because he says, use this code to access the video. So he gives you this cryptic code like a password. And I couldn't find any place to put it in there. So that tool that he had, I guess you could access it for a fee and it would work, but it didn't work. As just check out what we got going here. And I didn't pursue the free link. I might, because I think it looks interesting. He talks about, like sleep on day 8. You're supposed to take a 20-minute nap.
Well, we didn't really touch on that.
No,
the whole
right.
part 1 was about how important the foundational habits of sleep and play and escaping and having some white space and downtime are really important for being an essentialist.
Well, and for you and me as wellness advocates, I struggled a little bit with that too, because we've been encouraged to have a quiet time or a meditative time every day. We've been encouraged to laugh. We've been encouraged to make sure our diets are clean, and we've been encouraged to walk or to move our bodies. So if you put that on your calendar, pretty soon you've got a whole lot of time devoted to your well care and your self care, and so that could be a priority. You know, that's my number one priority. But I don't think that goes as far as what he was talking about. The good Lord has made you to do other things besides just take care of yourself. But if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
Yeah, our health is our wealth. And I think Greg teaches us it's okay to prioritize our health, and then we're forced to be selective about the way we contribute the rest of our time because it's limited to the world. And so when we do that, when we are choosy about what we do, we can truly offer our highest contributions.
Yeah, and so I think he has a chapter in here on flow and the genius of routine, which we've also talked about. So I think some of that well care can become a routine.
Yeah.
And it can really go to the background because it doesn't have to take up the forward moving space. It's going to happen, and it liberates you to have that as a routine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of good quotes in here from some wisdom folks too. So I'm glad we read this book. And like I said, he has a teaser for the next book at the end of this one. And this book is very well documented. He has a great bibliography and footnotes for how to find things. And there's an index, which I think is really helpful. But he has like a little chapter on his book called Effortless, which is not everything has to be so hard. And I think that having read the Essentialism, that might be a tandem book for this one.
Yeah. I like this book and I would recommend it.
I would too. Well, in that case, as 360 Health, I would like to say take care of yourselves, make your priorities clear, and have a wonderful day. And if you want to talk to me about some ways to help you do that, I'm at 360healthforyou.com.
And I am Kristen with Well Balanced Nutrition. I invite you to come join us on our website and participate in all the free stuff we have going on over there. So thanks for listening to our podcast today,
Absolutely.
guys.
Have a great day.
The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.